Okay. Okay, everyone is here, so we'll call the meeting to order. I have a motion moved by Bill McDonald and seconded by Sherry Wan that council suspend the rules of the procedural bylaw to allow delegations to move up in the agenda to follow item number 5, mayor's remarks. And further, that the agenda for the council meeting held July 14th, 2020 be approved as presented. Are there any amendments?
No, none.
Okay, hearing no amendments, then as presented. Let's see. I'll do what we've done. Is there anyone voting no? Hearing none, the motion is carried. I can only see a few of you at a time. So the gallery view doesn't seem to work as well. Okay, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of council?
Madam Mayor, if I may speak for just a moment?
Sure.
Just so that other council members know, in the past when this issue has come up, I have declared a conflict of interest, but I want people to know that I no longer work for Cabinscape. This issue is not related to Cabinscape. Also, because it is, there is no pecuniary element to it, I will not be declaring a conflict of interest at this time.
Okay. All right, we'll note that in the minutes. Right. Approval of the minutes. I have a motion moved by Tom Dewey and seconded by Cindy Kelsey that council approve the minutes of the council meeting held June 23rd, 2020 as amended. Any discussion?
I'll just mention what the amendments are. There was a couple of just typo corrections, and on the minutes under resolution number 2019-2020, the mover and seconder names were not there, so we have added them, and I believe it was Elwin and Nikki.
Yeah. I moved to the section of the minutes that have been amended, and it's right. The motion 2/19/2020 has been added.
Yes.
My phone's ringing and I don't know how to stop it, so bear with me. Okay, so is there anyone voting no to the motion? Hearing no dissent, motion's carried. Okay. Mayor's remarks, just a few brief remarks. One is, as you have all heard, we're opening this Friday with all of the restaurants and lots of different things. There's lots to be found out yet about how that process is going to work. One of the things with us will be playgrounds. How are we going to clean them and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to probably not open the playground as of Friday until we talk to the health unit more about cleaning and how that process can work. That's, I think, the major thing that will affect us. Community halls were not listed in the news on Monday. So we're not just sure where they're at yet, but we can now have 50 people in one spot inside and 100 people if you're outside, still wearing masks and hand washing and all of that stuff that goes with being safe. So there's still more to come about that. And we'll be on the call with Dr. Moore again on Monday. The other thing I just want to talk about for a minute is the tragedy that happened on Saturday night to Mr. Blake Young. One of our firefighters, Tony Young, it's his son that was killed in the car accident. And I'd like us all just to take a minute to think about the family. It's such a tough time for them. It's hard to know that we can do anything for them other than to keep them in our prayers. There is a GoFundMe page that I just found on Facebook today, if anyone wants to contribute. So I just ask us for a minute of silence to think about Tony Young's family.
has joined the meeting.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Dewey, do you have anything to add? Tom?
Or,
Tom, I just unmuted you.
oh, sorry. Well, I'm jumping back and forth here because okay, hang on a sec. No, okay, I'm unmuted now. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, and I just wanted to say that recently we've had some very positive comments from the members of the public and the constituents in the area here, especially in Kennebec. And I believe an email went to the mayor with regards to the excellent work that the Public Works Department has done in our area. And they sent along their congratulations for the excellent job that's been done. And I just want to pass it along because I think it shows the good work that we're now doing, and we're getting a lot of very positive feedback. So I want to congratulate Tyson and his staff on that excellent job and the work that they're doing.
Excellent. Yes. Okay, we're going to move on then to delegations. And our first delegation is with us, and that's Joan Williamson. Joan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
It's Joanne. Joanne,
Could the rest of us mute, please, because there's feedback. So if we could just all mute.
Joanne, if you can try now, we were all muted.
okay. If you can't hear me at any time, let me know. So I reside at 11548 Road 38 in Titchborne, and I'm a retired nurse after 47 years and have been in Titchborne for about 5 years. I'm very accustomed to a village lifestyle, and these days I'm enjoying a little more time on my front porch and observing things going on in the village. So I sent you a letter some time ago, I believe it was in March, and indicating some concerns I had for things happening in the village. And on a positive note, we've had the speed indicator placed at the both ends of the village for a period of a couple of weeks approximately, and some painting of lines on the road, and the sign for Titchborne at the green area beside the railway tracks has been updated, and a caring neighbor, I believe, has planted flowers in the flower beds and made it look very nice. The bylaw officer has apparently visited one neighbor I heard about, and regarding unlicensed vehicles sitting in the yard. I'm not sure if this happened in all yards in the village, but I do acknowledge that some of those things have been done. Unfortunately, some of the efforts, though, are overshadowed by the COVID-19. I'm sure it's had some effect on some of these things, particularly a reduced amount of, I'll say, the policing, I think, has perhaps changed along with everything else. And so it's a challenge for everybody. But the speed signs didn't have very much effect. In fact, I'm pretty sure we had some racing pickup trucks and maybe some cars. Early mornings and evenings are particularly a problem. I mean, early as 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, very loud and going more than 50 kilometers an hour as is the posted speed. We've got an increase in gravel trucks and multi-tank vehicles, and noticeably speeding as well. And as I mentioned in my first note, it would take them some time to slow down if they had to stop for a lineup of cars at the railway track. It might be a surprise to them how little time they'll have to slow down. But we also have, concerns for pedestrians and children out playing, dogs running, whatever it is. And I've personally had to indicate to vehicles to slow down while out on the sidewalk. The sidewalks are in most of the village, they do run pretty well the whole way, not totally, but close. And I did see another pedestrian having to do the same, just to indicate to cars to slow down. I left a message with the Charlotte Lake Police Department, the OPP, and didn't hear anything back about that. So I put on a online report this past week and have received a message back from them today that I would have to provide all the license plates of all the people that are speeding. I know that a safety blitz was put out by the OPP in the GTA this past weekend, talking about a similar thing and people speeding in the small villages on their way through and so on. That's pretty concerning and probably not very realistic for me to stand out at the end of the driveway, not very safe, taking down license plates. One of the greatest risks, I think, though, in Titchburn lies in the building at the corner of Frame and 38. I made some pictures available to you. There's rusty handrails and the old rusty gas pumps. They look like they recently had some pieces missing, more than was already there. So I'm not sure whether that will be worse for them or better, but anyway, falling siding in numerous areas, lots of broken windows, and now I understand then did happen to, I don't give you a picture, but there is a hole in the roof of the building right over top of the mailboxes where most of the village, obviously, and many people around are picking up their mail. The doors of the smaller buildings are gaping. They're large enough for any adult or child or multiple children to, if they're curious about what's inside. There's freezers and fridges and lumber and old TVs and lots of things that might be of interest. Unfortunately, the store, if you gaze in the window, does hold some museum-worthy looking items. I'm not sure it's too late to get them out of there, but anyway, that would be a nice thing to have in the museum. So I'm going to propose that the following is what I'd like to address to you. And again, keeping in mind that safety is of our greatest importance. The building itself is becoming, it's not only an eyesore and in the name of cleaning up and trying to increase our tourism and your efforts at improving things in Charlotte Lake. We're on the way to Charlotte Lake, so it'd be nice if we could have some of these things addressed if we could. I'm concerned that we might have an incident with all these speeding vehicles or a fire that might take that building down. I'm sure there are some very strange things that could happen. Parham probably didn't expect to have any issues in their village, but things do happen. And I'm not sure about it, but I think Titchburn has had a fire in the many years ago and nearly wiped out the entire village. We are close-knit, and that potentially could happen. I'm not sure about the gas pumps. I know that that's probably a pretty touchy subject, but at the same time, we could be having old fuel leaking out of those tanks that are in the ground if they're still there. And if they're not, that actually makes the cleanup a lot easier, but I'm sure they are still there. And I'm not sure if the Ministry of the Environment has done an assessment or what potentially we could do to fix this up. The old Titchburn sign is still there, and it's overshadowing the nice new one. If it was a green area, perhaps it could be a park or a dog park or something that complements the village. I'd like to see the village residents get together and have a discussion with council regarding what should be done there. And if necessary, I can visit many of the villagers and have some discussion as well. I know that money is going to likely be an issue with that. So I'm going to say that the some of the Canada Day funds maybe could help us out a little bit. There are other villages in the township, I'm sure, that deserve some funds as well, but if improvements for Charlotte Lake, it would be nice to see the villages around, including ours, where there's these particular safety concerns. Some of these things could be addressed. Thank you.
Joanne?
Yes.
It doesn't appear there's any questions. I want to thank you for bringing this to us. We do recognize that this building is an eyesore and does need to be dealt with. Once COVID-19 is over, maybe we should look at having a community meeting to get everybody together and gather some ideas and see what some options are for us. But at this point, I think until we can actually start to meet in halls again, that's probably not going to happen until maybe in the fall. But definitely we'll keep it on our radar.
So if COVID-19 continues and we're not allowed to have the meetings, could it be addressed in a different way?
We can certainly have staff take a look at, first of all, costs and your question about the Minister of Environment and the gas pumps, all that sort of thing. We can also make a phone call to the OPP and raise our concerns as well about the speeding and ask them to up their presence in the Titchburn area, especially over summer, because there's a lot more traffic. So we can certainly do that while we're waiting.
So in the meantime, there's a lot of risk there. Is there anything that can be done about the surroundings of the area? I've sent people these pictures. You can see that the siding's falling off and the mailboxes are right there. I'm not sure that a great wind wouldn't do something. You know, liability is an issue. I don't know if this building, I think it belongs to the township now, but there needs to be something, I think, addressed, you know, soon. That's all.
Ownership of it.
Fran, you were muted there for your first comments.
I was saying this building, as far as I'm aware, is in limbo right now. It's not our building. Maybe I'll have Mike McGovern just make a comment about the tax sale. Michael's just going to his office. Are you there, Michael?
He's trying.
Okay.
He's coming on. There he is.
And I guess the other thing, Joanne, at this point is there certainly was no money put in the budget to take down a building like this. They often become very, very costly to dispose of. But Michael can tell us who has ownership of this building right now.
No, we can't hear you, Michael. I think I can answer the question though in Michael's absence, because we had a discussion about this. It is a property that has gone through the tax sale process and it was not sold by tax sale, but it has not been vested in the municipality as well. So it would be likely a candidate to go to the failed tax sale process once the township initiates that after COVID.
Okay, so again, I think we will keep this on our radar, Joanne. As soon as we can, we will have a community meeting to talk to folks, and we'll have staff do some investigations in the meantime as far as what could be done with the building to make it safe.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and before you go, I have a motion, and it's moved by Sherry Wan and seconded by Bill McDonald, that council receive the presentation from Joanne Williamson for information. Is there anyone voting no to the motion? The motion's carried. And again, thank you, Joanne, for bringing this to us.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Ryan Conboy with us, and I think his presentation is up on the screen. Ryan, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for as well for allowing me this opportunity to be with you today. I think rather than going through that presentation, I have pre-sent that presentation out to members of council, and it was included in your agenda. If you haven't had the opportunity to view the presentation, or if the link did not work and you would like to view it, I would be happy to resend that presentation to you. I just wanted to come to council today to talk about a couple issues that have come up recently regarding my grandmother's property. And it's located at 2764 Bell Line Road. So recently there's been a development taking place to the west of our property. And the developer has now erected a dock out across what we feel is a road allowance and encroaches onto our property. I first brought my concern forward to staff on May 28th, just kind of inquiring as to whether or not structures were allowed on what we feel is a road allowance. And then we never really heard anything back until after the June 9th in-camera session that I believe council had. And I understand there's lots of legalities around what can and can't be said and after these in-camera sessions, but I'm not sure that council was aware or even discussed what our main concern is, and that's the encroachment of the dock onto our property. I think it's a dangerous precedent to set, to have a structure on a road allowance, but that's the decision that I guess has been made. But so our concern is that it's the encroachment onto our property and not necessarily this road allowance. So I sent a couple questions to staff about this dock, and one of them was inquiring as to whether or not it actually conformed to the current bylaw. I haven't received any confirmation back about that yet. I understand that enforcement was out last week to review that, so I'm anticipating some sort of response in the next couple of weeks, I hope. And then on July 8th, we also received some additional answers to some of the questions we're asking. But I just want to let council know or discuss another issue that has happened as a result of the June 9th in-camera session. And that is, and actually, can I share my screen? I can probably show the road allowance or the area in question for members of council. Am I able to do that?
Just give me a second here. I can, I just need to find you on my list. Bear with me.
Madam Mayor, Donald here. A question to Ryan on your first picture here, Ryan.
Yes,
What's
Bill.
the heavy blue line that's on this first map here? What does that indicate?
In the top right corner, that
Oh,
indicates the Crown land.
Yeah, I didn't hear you.
That indicates the Crown land as per the Frontenac maps. So if you see that, you can actually all the way up through on the west, even on Frontenac maps.
Yes, I see that.
That first picture.
That's the concession.
That's the concession.
But what does the blue line on the east side of that line mean?
Sorry, that's the outline of my grandmother's property.
That's the question I was asking you.
Yep, that's the outline of my grandmother's property.
So does it end right there where you end the blue line?
If there's water there, yes, but there currently is no water there, so it continues all the way up to the road allowance between lots 20 and 21.
So
If
it just
there's
goes
water,
a bit
there's still a tiny bit of water there. So as per the M&R, that is where our property would end. But if there's no water in that area, our property would extend all the way to the north between road allowance 20 and 21, lots 20 and 21.
which is the line coming in straight from the west.
Yep, it's the east-west road allowance. That's correct.
Okay, that's fine.
Ryan, I have shared I've moved it over to you, so I think you should be able to control the screen.
Okay, so if I go share content, this is my first time with this, so share content and screen. Okay. these are to the survey. Everybody sees, I guess, first question. So this is a survey that was done in 1979. And what I wanted to bring to council's attention is, and I don't know if I can highlight it. In this corner here, and currently today, there is a Crown Land Surveyor's post from 1934. And on the top of that post, it shows a road allowance going east-west and a road allowance going north-south, and then lot 20 in the bottom right-hand corner. So on this survey, this little line, can you see my cursor? I'm not sure if you can see my cursor.
Yes, small, but we can see it.
Okay. So
Yeah.
on this survey from 1979, this little line is labeled as the ordinary high water mark. So a new survey was done in November of this year, 2019, and they were marking this part 3 area. But the interesting thing is that this line, which matches that 1979 survey, changed from the ordinary high water mark to the water's edge all of a sudden. Now, I was there the day that it was surveyed, and I've talked to the surveyor, and there is no water in that area. So I talked to the M&R about if this area to the north of this water's edge is dry land, who in fact owns that land? It looks pretty clear to me that this road allowance north-south or east-west and this road allowance north-south is very similar. It's clearly labeled. There's a corner post there. So what the ministry told me would happen is that when there's no water, your property lines get extended in this direction. So this is over here is my grandmother's property over here. So our property line comes up here and extends this way. So if there is no water here, who owns that? So in the letter I received from the clerk, it says that the road allowance actually ends on this line, which if there is water there, I do not dispute. If there is water, I do not dispute that. But again, the fact is this is completely dry land right now. The water could be at times in this area, but this is dry and always has been dry. So, and I've put the request out to have council come out to do a site visit so they can see for themselves. And I find it really interesting that in this area, there's a maple tree, just like a massive maple tree. And I've never seen a maple tree grow in the bed of a lake. So I'm not sure how that happened, but this post is on the ground right here, plain, easy to see. And then there's a maple tree between it and where the lake currently is. It just seems strange, but regardless of where these lines are now, if we extend those property lines out in this fashion, this is where this part 3 lot, this is where the part 3 lot ends, right here. So their portion of Warren's Lake is this area right here. The rest is either township road allowance or crown land, we think. And then if dry land is over here, then that's our land continuing up through. So what has happened now is that I have been threatened with trespassing for being in this area on dry land. I've been going to that area since I was a kid. It's dry land. So I'm just wondering how all of a sudden it's gone from a township road allowance to public or to private property and sole possession and ownership of this part 3 developer. So my concern, we don't have any issues with this dock. I'll try to delete this stuff so you can see. But we
before you go, Ryan, show me where the dock is.
So it's approximately, Tom. This is I'm not approximately. So what I did, I measured from this post here out to the dock, and it was 42 feet. So the dock starts in about this area here, and then extends right out, right to this edge. So then this is our property. So it ends right at our property line. So we feel in order to meet the bylaw that it has to stop at least 5 meters back here. And that's dry land, but that's fine. And if council wants to go into an agreement to allow this structure on this piece of property, I don't think you should be interfering with our property rights, and that's this 5 meter encroachment. As our property line is extended up this east side, this way. So our proposal, or what we have asked to happen, is that the bylaw be followed. And part of that is that the dock has to start on the shoreline, which according to this survey, the shoreline is up here. This area right here is the shoreline of Warrens Lake as per the survey. So that's where the dock should start. That's basically what we're requesting. And then the 5 meters from this property line and this property line should also be followed. That's our concern, and that's our request. That again, we're not asking for any sort of favors here. We're just asking for the rules to be followed. We've had problems in the past with this developer that has caused damage to both our property and the municipal property, and we're still in negotiations over that damage. But there just seems to be a repeat trend here of not seeking the proper approvals before work being done. So I think that's all I'll talk about right now. I'm happy to answer any questions that members might have. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Ryan?
I'll just want to ask Ryan, where is the actual water's edge, Ryan, in relation to the road allowance? Where's the actual water right now?
Right now, Tom, it's the eastern part of the road allowance. So,
like how many?
The water not at its lowest point yet by far.
So it's actually on the road allowance. It's actually on the. You're saying it's on the east side of the road allowance.
Just barely touching the road allowance. Yep.
Okay, fair enough.
But there's still, you know, there's that 66 feet wide. So there's probably 40 feet at least of dry land to the west side of that road allowance.
Right.
Okay. Maybe Cindy could fill us in. There was the bylaw enforcement officer and the conservation authority were out. Have there been any decisions made by any of those groups?
Yeah, so we did go out, did a site visit, and then we had extensive discussions with the planning staff to help us interpret the zoning bylaw. Unfortunately, we take a slightly different take on the extent of ownership there, and so that impacts the zoning decision that we have taken. But generally, after this discussion with their planning staff, is that we feel that the dock generally meets the intent of the bylaw from our perspective, and largely because we don't have any legal or formal title information that deals with the extent of the road allowance in that area. Everything that's registered on title and the block mapping at the registry office is our only and best evidence that we have to show high water marks and property lines, and that is what we're basing our information on.
So it does in fact meet the 5 meter setback from the Warrens land?
Yes, we feel that it does.
Could I invite members of council to come out and look?
No, council to be on the land is quite useless, I might say. I think, Ryan, we have to go with the maps, and staff have been out there and measured. And if the bylaw enforcement officer, what about the conservation authority?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Well, I asked to put a dock in the same area, and I was told that I'd need to contact the MNR and the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. So that's what I did. And I was told that I would need a permit for anything over 15 square meters. So the current dock is closer to 30 square meters, and a permit was not taken out. So I'm not sure why I need a permit, but the other developer does not.
Cindy, can you speak to the Conservation Authority's visit?
They attended with us at the site visit, and we're making arrangements with, the developers making arrangements with Mississippi Valley to follow their requirements.
So he didn't follow them, but now they're catching up.
Yeah.
After the fact.
Yes.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Does the survey of Warren's property show differently than the information that we have at the municipality?
Cindy, can you answer that?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, that's one of the drawbacks to how to deal with this situation, because there is no survey of the Warren property that tells us anything differently. And I have offered in previous correspondence to the convoys that if they do have survey evidence that is different than what we see already registered on title, that could change our opinion, but unfortunately we don't have that. So the best evidence that we have, the registered reference plan of 1979, which was redrawn by the developer in the fall of last year.
Okay, so it's almost like one surveyor has to dispute the other surveyor's work.
Correct.
Okay, so at this point then, we're waiting for the official decision from the bylaw enforcement officer. And as you say, it sounds like they're saying that the dock is okay, and the Conservation Authority is saying, provided he apply and pay for all the permits, they will issue him a permit. So at this point, I don't think there's anything more that we can do.
Okay.
Or is there anything more that we need to do?
Times to have staff come out and meet with us on site to prove with a measuring tape and prove that it meets the 5-meter setback. And we cannot seem to make that meeting happen. So if somebody can come out to the site and prove to us, to me, that it meets the bylaw as it is written, I will be satisfied. But until that time, I'm not going to be satisfied with that answer. So I right from the get-go, I've said if we can prove that it meets it, great. But there needs to be proof and not just on paper. Like there has to be physical evidence that it meets it. So
Cindy, is that
I don't think that's unreasonable.
Cindy, is that something we can do?
We can. Andy and I have both been out several times, and the issue is going to be the interpretation of where we measure that line from, because we're going with the survey evidence and Ryan's going with what's on the ground. So I'm not sure it will resolve anything at this point.
Sorry, if the survey posts are there, is that something you can pull a measurement from?
We have already measured from the survey posts that have been placed by the developer's surveyor, who found the original monuments of the 1979 survey. So that's what we have based our investigation on.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
Why, could someone explain to me why you seem to be basing everything on the developer's survey? The convoys have also given a survey. Is there no happy medium between the two?
Actually, the convoys land along there has not been surveyed. Is that right, Ryan? Ryan, are you still there?
Oh, it is correct, but it's clearly documented that our property is on the east side of that road allowance running north-south. So the road allowance has been surveyed, so it's pretty easy to assume that our property is just to the east of that line. It doesn't physically show our property on the survey. Sure, I agree with that.
And to clarify, there is no survey description for the road allowance. It's only located as a result.
Pardon me, sorry?
The road allowance is not, there's no reference plan describing the road allowance.
There is a pin, but that pin would have been put in way back years and years ago.
Yes, that's right. It's not, and it's on the north shore of the lake, so it doesn't impact the road allowance on the south side as it's currently showing.
But there is another survey post on the south side of that same road allowance on the southeast, located at the corner of Fanning Lane. That
Okay,
marks the other side of that road allowance.
I think this is beyond council settling. I think another survey needs to be done. I think we have to go with what we've got unless there's another survey. And I don't know that you want to go to that expense. Or that you want to go to that.
It's what's already on paper. It seems, it is a lot of money to put us through. Lifetime residents, 6th generation taxpayer, and we're forced to do this. So,
well, no, you're not forced to. But if you choose to dispute what we've got on paper, we need something else on paper to show that it's wrong. We're not surveyors. We can sit here all night and dispute the same thing. And we're not going to come to any resolution.
No, Madam Mayor, the only thing that you probably could do is have a surveyor like Tom McDonald, somebody to go out and actually with Ryan and certainly staff to look at it, take what he's got with the survey on like in paper and actually find the locations. I think that's the only way, because none of us are surveyors. So to actually determine exactly those monuments and things that are there, somebody that is actual surveyor would be able to help that situation. And maybe that's a solution. It may not cost us a lot of money to have Tom McDonald, as one instance, to go out with staff to look at it. It certainly, you wouldn't be doing necessarily a survey. Take what's already on the survey that's already been, like the two, like Cindy has mentioned, and have him go out there with staff and with Ryan there to look at it and say, this is what is determined, and measure, and maybe that would help. That's just an option.
Yeah.
Yeah, the monuments are all clear.
Just to clarify, the existing survey pins that are there as a result of the 1979 plan are quite visible, because the work done in the fall has got posts sticking up. So it's quite visible to see what has been surveyed, where it is on the ground. I think the issue is what hasn't been surveyed and the interpretation of that.
Yeah, and I think that's the only way, is to maybe have him come and look at it and see and sort of help determine.
Now, Ryan, would you be happy to do that?
Have Tom McDonald come out, you mean? Hire him or meet with him? I'll have to see Emily for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
No, I was just going to say, in order to resolve this, because you've spent a lot of time, staff has spent a lot of time, we need to resolve this once and for all so we can all get on with our life. And I talked to your grandma, and it's upsetting for her, and we need to get this done. So if you're agreeable, we'll split the cost with you and have Tom come out and solve it for us.
Sorry, you're confirming you're splitting the cost for Tom to come out? That's first.
Well, the thing is, too, and I don't think Tom would charge a lot just to go out to kind of look at what's on the ground and with the survey, so it wouldn't be. But if council wishes to do that, certainly we can split the cost.
I'm just throwing that out there. Council would need to vote on that. That was just my suggestion.
Madam Mayor, it's Brent here.
Yes.
Just for the fact that we need to have some clarification on the road allowance, I think that us participating in this would be a good idea. The problem is there's no clarity across the board, where we need to get on the same hymn sheet on this, and I think this would be a good move, and I would certainly support this.
Okay. Does anyone else want to comment?
Madam Mayor, I will move the motion that we move forward if we can get a seconder. Bill here.
I'll second. It's Brent. I'll second that.
Okay, actually, I have a motion that I'm just putting this in. It's moved by Bill and seconded by Tom Dewey. I can change, I'll change that to Brent. Brent's verbalizing that. Okay. And that, just one moment. Okay, I have a motion before you. Moved by Bill McDonald, seconded by Brent Cameron. That council received the presentation from Ryan Conboy for information, and further that Tom McDonald be hired to meet with staff and Ryan Conboy, and that the cost be shared 50-50. Any more discussion?
We want to specify what parameters we're hiring Tom for, because I don't want to get ourselves into committing to a full reference plan. So I don't know if we want to sort of,
I think it's
tune the scope.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably maybe more be hired to determine, maybe to determine the outcome of the survey, maybe, as well as the
To determine, now wait a minute, to determine the
I would think
boundaries?
to determine maybe the survey, maybe the location, maybe.
Madam Mayor, could I suggest that, Bill here, that clarify or determine the clarification of the survey that we have in our possession at this time?
Okay, that's one option. Cindy, do you have any suggestions? I've got to determine the survey location on the ground. Survey lines.
I think that, yeah, which would basically.
Sorry, could we determine the water's edge?
That's
So we determine the water's edge if whether or not it is actively over the road allowance or not.
Well, I think.
I don't know, that's my suggestion, but.
Right. Again, though, if you do it in the spring, the water's edge is going to be different than if you do it in November.
But he will be able to clarify that other surveyor, because he is a surveyor, to look at those. So I think you're right, Fran, further that Tom would be hired to determine the survey location. So that way then they can do measuring as to find out about the dock.
Yes, I think
I was going to say, Kath, that's important. I think we need to put the dock in relationship to the survey points.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Okay. Determine dock location. All right, I'm going to read you again what I've got here. And further that Tom McDonald be hired to meet with staff and Ryan Conboy, and that the cost be shared 50-50 to determine the survey lines on the ground and to determine the dock location.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sufficient?
Yes, I think so.
And just one other thing, Madam Mayor, if I may, if
Yes.
the developer wants to be present during this, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Yeah, good point. Okay. Does anyone else have any comments on the motion as it's written? Okay, hearing none. Is there anyone voting no to the motion? Motion's carried. Okay, so it will be a matter of getting a hold of Tom McDonald now, depending on how busy he is. And hopefully we can get this resolved once and for all. Ryan, thank you for coming tonight. And if you want to stay on the line for the rest of council meeting, you're more than welcome.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. Take care.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Okay, deferred items, we have none. Staff reports, development services. Andy, we have a motion moved by Cindy Kelsey and seconded by Sherry Wan. The council received the construction details report June 2020 as prepared by the Development Services Assistant for information. Do you want to put that up on the screen, Cindy?
Oh, I'm not sharing the screen anymore, sorry. Bear with me here.
Actually, folks probably have, does anyone have any questions or comments for Andy? Andy, do you have any questions or comments for us?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I want to apologize for the graph. I didn't realize that normally the graph on the report updates when the numbers are entered, but that didn't happen this time. But We got it corrected earlier today.
And people see it on their screen now?
Yes. Okay, no other questions or comments? Is there anyone voting no? Okay, motion's carried. Our next item is encroachment request. I have a motion moved by Tom Dewey and seconded by Cindy Kelsey. Whereas the Manager of Development Services CBO has received a request from Gerard Desrosiers for permission to allow a partially constructed set of stairs to encroach on the road allowance. And whereas the Manager of Public Works and Manager of Development Services have inspected the site and support the entering into an encroachment agreement as a viable option. Now therefore be it resolved that Council approve of the recommendation of staff to enter into an encroachment agreement with the property owner for the property located at 14786 Road 38 to accommodate the encroachment of the stairs onto the road allowance. And further that Council approve staff to go ahead and prepare the encroachment agreement and that the mayor and CAO clerk be authorized to sign the standard encroachment agreement with the property owner. Any discussion? Hearing none. Is there anyone voting no? Motion's carried. That's the second one we've had lately. Okay, next is radon remediation. Moved by Victor Hayes, seconded by Elwin Burke, that Council receive the radon remediation report as prepared by the Manager of Development Services dated July the 14th, 2020 for information. And further that Council approve the recommendation of the Development Services Manager to hire a certified radon mitigation specialist to install a radon mitigation system in the municipal office building and the Charlotte Lake Medical Center. And further that Development Services Manager be directed to issue purchase orders for the successful bidder and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the formal documents. Any discussion?
I support it.
Is anyone voting no? Motion is carried. Next, we have water access civic addressing. Moved by Brent Cameron, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that Council receive the water access civic addressing report as prepared by the Manager of Development Services and Treasurer for information. And further, that Council approve the recommendation of staff to proceed with the project and adopt the recommended guidelines for addressing water access only properties for member municipalities in the County of Frontenac. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council authorize staff to begin as soon as possible to utilize summer staff in order to be ready for the next generation 911 by the completion date of December 31st, 2020. Any discussion?
Bill here, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Is this going to be a joint effort between all three North or Frontenac townships? Because I assume if we're moving forward to a new enhanced 911, that everybody will be involved. Everybody has lakes and everybody has water access to it. So is this a joint effort?
Who can answer that for us? Kathy?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can probably answer that.
Okay, Andy?
I think Andy can.
Yes, some of the lakes are, partially in one township and partially in another, so everybody's getting moving to get on board with this, as well as Livingston, Addington. Charlene could probably speak more to it than I can if she's on the line here.
I think she's on now, yes.
Yep, I see her here. Hi, Charlene.
Hi, how are you? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, yes. I know at County Council, under Kevin Farrell has taken the 911 next generation information to County Council. And so now we're taking it to the townships to approve. So It has been deployed to South Frontenac. They haven't taken it to council yet, and as you guys, North Frontenac has already adopted a similar water access policy, so they're already ahead of us this way. So yeah, we need to move forward. And then the county of Lennox and Addington, because they're in the same area, is also adopting this for all of their lower tier municipalities as well.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Bill here again. My question was basically, Andy touched on it, is because there's going to be a lakes that Bob's Lake, for example, and Crow Lake that in fact that span 2 townships. So what kind of joint effort are we doing, working cooperatively to actually get all of the water access correctly done? That's really the basis of my question. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So Andy, our other.
Actually, Bob's sorry.
Go ahead, Charlene.
Bob's Lake actually fronts on 3 townships, so it's Central, South, and Tay Valley. So Central and South are going to be moving this way, and so our shared bodies of water that traverse the townships will all be moving to this new addressing system.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Your worship.
Questions, Tom?
It's Tom here, Your Worship. I don't know. I had to answer the door here. Somebody came, so I don't know if somebody's asked this already, but I just had to ask. For example, are we going to have any public consultation on this with the naming? Because let's say, for example, you've got more than one resident on an island, and some people know it as, let's say, Ward's Island. Somebody else may know it as Rankin's Island, and I'm just wondering. In that case, would we not want to have some sort of public consultation as to come up with a proper name for that particular island? And I'm only saying islands because probably mainland or the water access areas are not going to be a problem.
I'm sure if there's a dispute, we'll hear about it. But Charlene, is there an appeal process?
Decided within your own township, but if you follow the road naming bylaw that Central Frontenac has, they would be polling the property owners for that name.
Oh,
So it would be very similar to that.
Oh, okay, that's fine, as long as there's some public consultation on it, because I can see it being an issue.
Yes, you're right. Any other questions or comments?
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
We have identified 40 islands that have structures on them that do not have names registered with, I forget what the acronym is there, with the Ontario naming board or whatever it's called. So there'll be about 40, at least 40 letters to go out to determine the names of those islands.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I'll mention, because I think, yeah, you're right, Andy, it's under the Ontario Geographic Names Board. And
That's
I think
right.
they have the final say, from what I could read in the information, and maybe Charlene can confirm that, they have the ultimate decision when it comes to naming of the island. Is that correct?
You would put forth a name, and council would send a letter of support for that. The only way the Ontario Geospatial Naming Board wouldn't accept it is if it was offensive or didn't follow, or named after a person. I think in the document that I sent, there are links to the Ontario Geospatial Naming Board that gives the specifics of what they do. So they pretty much will approve as long as it's not offensive.
Okay.
I think it's got a locally named, you can also present a locally known name or no name present. So I think that in the case that some folks may, as Tom mentioned, that, people know by a couple of different names, I think those folks can get together as to maybe what name they wish to choose.
We will have some work to do on that one, I'm sure.
Yep.
Okay. If there's no other comments, Is there anyone voting no to the motion? The motion's carried. Okay. Next, we have a motion moved by Nikki and seconded by Brent. Whereas the 2020 budget provided funding up to $40,000 for a building assessment study to be completed. And whereas a funding opportunity is available, which would allow us to expand the scope of the building assessment study. Now therefore be it resolved that council authorize staff to apply for a grant opportunity from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program for asset data updates in Central Frontenac. And further that the Township of Central Frontenac commits to conducting the following activities in its proposed project submitted to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program to advance our asset management program. Building condition assessments. Be it further resolved that the Township of Central Frontenac commits a minimum of $12,500 from the $40,000 in its budget towards the cost of this initiative. Any questions or comments? Michael would be the fellow, I think, that would speak to this.
Hi, Madam Mayor. I'm in Cindy's office because I'm having vocal issues, which is a good thing for everybody, unless I snuck in here. So I wanted to apologize to council because in the background information, I said $50,000. What the Madam Mayor read was correct. It's only $40,000 that was in the budget. When we approved the budget, we were hoping that the $40,000 would do everything, and it may still, but we're going off of an estimate from North Frontenac, what they paid. We have more buildings, as the Development Services Manager mentioned, but also while we're at it, if we can get the accurate costs of what AO, Accessibility of Ontario Disabilities Act is going to cost us coming up, and Danny has the data as to when it needs to be done by. But we might as well get all that information now and take advantage of that full grant, because my initial thought was we would save $27,500 and simply invest our $12,500 if the grant's approved. So if the grant is not approved, then we stick with our $40,000 and do what we can.
Okay. Okay, any questions or comments? Definitely something that's good to have.
Yes, any grant is good.
Yes. Anyone voting no? Hearing no no's, motion's carried.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are at Public Works. I have a motion moved by Elwin and seconded by Victor that council receive the Public Works activity report as prepared by the Public Works Manager dated July the 14th, 2020 for information. Any questions or comments? Tyson, oh, sorry, go ahead, Nikki.
Oh, thank you, sorry. Tyson, I've had a lot of calls about gypsy moth. I was wondering if the Public Works had any ideas or thoughts about what we could pass on to our constituents about helping with the gypsy moths other than what they're finding on the internet.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I've been receiving quite a bit of emails and phone calls as well, and the mayor and Kathy and I have been looking into it. And what we're going to do is everybody's doing a little bit of research right now, and what we're going to do is just put out a bit of a notification on the website to the public about what our plan is. But the township is not going to be able to do anything about the moths, anything like any questions about spraying or anything like that. The township will not be doing any of that this year for sure, and I'm doubting next year, but research is ongoing.
Thank you very much.
I think if those of us that were around 30 years ago remember the infestation then, what happened was property owners got together down the road, if there were 5 or 6 properties, to get the spraying done privately, because there's no sense doing one property if your neighbors don't do theirs. And it was all done privately through private sprayers. M&R, I believe, finally, after much persuasion, decided to spray some of the Crown land. But, you know, trees did come back. I was asking Bill McDonald what types of trees actually died after that infestation. And he suggested the red oaks had a hard time. I am noticing right now that trees that were totally stripped now have new growth leaves and seem to be doing okay.
Yeah,
Does
and
anyone
if
wanna-
you, Madam Mayor, also too, I had sent certainly an email to some and certainly all of council in regards to some information, and like Tyson mentioned, I do have some information where the town of Pelham up in Niagara Falls, and a lot of questions and lots of answers, frequently asked questions that might be helpful for folks as well. And you're correct in the sense that they are a cycle. And I think now what you're seeing, and when I read some of the information, is now the caterpillars have gone into moths. And that's why I think we're finding a whole bunch of moths around the trees. What those do, I think it's the moths that actually would lay the eggs on the bark of the tree. And I think there's things in here to be able to remove that larva off there that will help to control, I think, some of the gypsy moths for a year, for next year. So, but I can certainly, with Tyson and what I can pull some of this information and certainly put it in for August if council wishes.
Well, and put that stuff on the website as well. Yes, Bill.
I would just suggest to people that we have to be patient. A couple of years ago, what we're dealing with here is more than gypsy moths. You've also got an infestation of forest caterpillars, which was here a couple of years ago, and they are cyclical, so they're up and they're down. And but when you start talking about spraying for these, I would caution people to be very knowledgeable about what they're spraying, because what'll happen is that when you spray the bugs will die, of course, but what happens is that the birds will start eating the worms with the pesticide in it. And then of course we have a case of then the birds start dying off, and you will start to get environmentalists really screaming their head off at us for trying to do something about Mother Nature, and invariably what happens is man's actions usually have a domino effect and something else happens also. So I'd just be careful when it comes to spraying and make sure you know what you're actually engaging in.
Yeah, and I think some of the areas are using the pesticide BTK, which is, and it talks about the difference, and it's been approved by the Pest Management Regulatory Agency and the Agency of Health Canada for area. That's only for aerial use. So.
And the spraying will only be effective while the worms are actually eating the leaves. So we're a long way by when spray would be effective at this time. If you were going to spray, you would probably have had to spray maybe close to a month ago or even more.
Yeah, that's correct. And I know what I did at my house is I just used soap and water in a spray bottle and went at them.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on the activity report? We'll leave tent caterpillars for another day. Okay, anybody voting no to the motion? Motion's carried. Okay. We have a motion moved by Victor and seconded by Tom. Whereas Council passed Resolution 58, 2020 on February the 11th, 2020, authorizing the Public Works Manager to submit a joint application with the County of Frontenac to the Rural Economic Development Program for funding to assist with the Downtown Revitalization Program in conjunction with the current construction project. And whereas the Downtown Revitalization Program provides funding for a full-time 12-month contract coordinator position to manage the program. And whereas the Public Works Manager, along with the Deputy Clerk and members of the Economic Development Committee, the Charlotte Lake Business Group, and Frontenac County interviewed 4 candidates on July the 2nd, 2020. And as a result have chosen Adriana Barbary. And whereas the CAO clerk has approved of the hiring of Adriana Barbary as the Downtown Revitalization Coordinator, who has accepted the position and will start on July the 20th, 2020. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council confirm the appointment of Adriana Barbary. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
it's Brent. I'd like to kind of put in a word for the Economic Development Committee. First of all, thanks to those members of the committee who worked with Tyson and Cindy on this. We're very excited. I do believe that this is going to have an impact which is bigger than Charlotte Lake. I know that our previous presenter was talking about the challenges we're having in Titchburn and among other places. I think we have to understand that a lot of the work that gets done here is going to be hopefully a template for economic development beyond Sherbert Lake. We have an opportunity to do a lot of groundbreaking work for Sherbert Lake, but we should also remember that a lot of the best practices and a lot of the research and a lot of the data, we can apply that to Arden, Parham, Godfrey, Titchburn. So there's a great opportunity here. And, we're very excited about this and certainly look forward to, I'm obviously supporting it and I hope everybody else feels good about it as well.
Good. Okay.
Just a quick question, Your Worship. It's Tom.
Yes.
Will we have to provide office space for this individual or will they be working from home?
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Tyson?
Through you, Madam Mayor. We have an office set up right now that'll be shared with my engineering summer student. Actually, Heather's even looking into, she might have it set up by now, a separate cubicle in the common area where our summer student currently works. So, but the majority of her work is going to be from home and on site, and she's very flexible. She's basically prepared for whatever way COVID-19 goes. She's prepared to work 100% at home, or if things lighten up, she's prepared to work 100% in this office. And we do have the space for her.
Thanks, Tyson.
Excellent. Okay. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none.
I had something similar prepared to what Brent said. I'm really excited about this being it triggered it triggered me as well when the presenter earlier in the meeting was talking about Titchburn, and I'm really excited for this being a pilot project for the rest of the Frontenac County. So I think it's not just I don't want anybody to think it's just for Charlotte Lake. It's exciting for the whole county. So thank you.
Excellent. Very good. Something that's transferable for all of our hamlets and villages. It makes a lot of sense. Okay. Is there anyone voting no? Hearing none, motion's carried. All right, moving on. I have a motion moved by Sherry Wan, seconded by Bill McDonald. Whereas tender PW 2020-04 was released on June 30th, 2020 and closed on July the 14th, 2020 for Road 38 shoulder restoration as described in the document. And whereas the Public Works Manager is in the process of reviewing the bids to evaluate according to the criteria outlined in the tender and will be recommending the candidate for the selection of the successful candidate at the meeting. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council award Cranes Construction as the successful bidder in the amount of $57,000 excluding HST. And further, that Public Works Manager be authorized to issue a purchase order for the work. Discussion? Any questions or comments? Hearing none.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, sorry, yes. It took me a second to get my mute button undone.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, question to Tyson. Were there other bidders for this, and what was the range of their bids?
Through you, Madam Mayor, in my report, we've got they're not in order. I'll list them off first of all, just the way they're in the report. Cranes Construction came in at $57,000. Len Corcoran Excavating, $72,875. Gemmel Sand and Gravel, $67,500. Robinson Excavating and Trucking was $99,375. Tackerberry and Sons is $71,875. So contractors got back to me and said the tender was very easy to bid on and fair, and the numbers reflect that.
Okay.
Thank you, Tyson.
Excellent. Okay. Any more questions or comments? Hearing none. Is anyone voting no? Motion's carried. All right, speed zones, moved by Nikki and seconded by Brent. Whereas the current speed zones throughout the township have not been updated since 2003, with some exceptions, and whereas the Public Works Manager would like to update the speed zone bylaw to reflect more consistent speed zones throughout the entire township. And whereas the Community Policing Advisory Committee reviewed the draft bylaw at its meeting held June 15th, 2020, and no concerns were identified. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Council approve the recommendation of the Public Works Manager to accept the proposed bylaw number 2020-35 speed zone on all township-owned roads. Any discussion, questions, or comments?
If I may make a clarification, because there was a change to the report, and I don't think Kathy captured it on the resolution. The last update was in 2009. The original report said 2003, but that was 2009. So I don't know if you want to change the resolution to reflect the more recent date.
Okay, Nikki and Brent, can I change 2003 to 2009? Brent and Nikki?
Yes.
Certainly. Yeah.
Okay. I corrected that to 2009. Okay. Anyone voting no? Motion's carried.
No, it's quiet. They must have quit working for a while.
That's good, because my desk was vibrating just a minute ago.
No doubt, and I was having trouble hearing people.
Okay, I have a motion moved by Elwin and seconded by Victor. The council received for information the CFFR activity report as prepared by the acting manager of emergency services / fire chief. So Tyson, you're off the hook and fire is on. Any questions or comments on the activity report? Katie is here to answer them if we have them.
For you, Madam.
Yes, go ahead.
I have two things. I'm not sure if they're quite, one's a question, one isn't. Friedel, now that Parham, the situation is behind you, and I'm sure you've done a debrief, I was wondering if anything has come out about how you might address communications if and when, and hopefully never, there is another situation like that. There was a lot of seniors that were concerned when they didn't know what was going on, and then they lost their power. And the one that I heard from was about because of their lifeline. I know that the emergency alert program, you can use it in specific areas. Is that something that you might address if and when or never, if there is another issue?
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Nikki. We actually have, Tyson and I have reached out to have a meeting with the base commander for the South Frontenac and the Sharp Lake OPP. We haven't had a date yet set up to meet, and that is my discussion is just based around the whole IMS response systems and how fire and OPP and all the emergency services communicate during an emergency like that, because that is one thing that came out of this call is the IMS system didn't work the way it's intended to, and so we'd like to work with the OPP and you know, hopefully we never have to use it again, but when we do, we want to make sure that all the communication is there. As far as the alert systems, I am actually Thursday sitting with a company that's going to be doing a presentation on community alert and notifications in case of community and municipal emergencies. So if something comes from that, then I'll bring that forth at a later date to council.
Thank you. That's my second question is about your dry hydrants. Tom and Cindy have both been concerned about how low the Arden Pond is, and with being attached to Quinty, I've asked a couple of times now about putting some water into the Arden Pond. And last week when I was consulting with them again, they brought up that there's a permit sitting waiting for approval about putting a dry hydrant in at that pond. And my question, I guess, is when you thought about where you're going to put them, was low water levels a consideration?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it was considered. Generally, that section of water in the village doesn't get that low as it is or as it was. I also reached out to Quinte Conservation, and within 24 hours of my email, the water is back up. I actually just received the permit today to install the dry hydrant at the mill pond in Arden. But there is the clause on there that the water level may be low at times, and so it's just something that we have to monitor and work with Quinte when we notice the water levels getting there, and work at bringing the water levels up, because it's a two dam system there. There's a dam just about 150 meters up from the mill pond. So yeah, so we'll work closely with Quinte and managing that dry hydrant.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Tyson, you had something to add?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just wanted it to be in the minutes that Sharon from OPP did commit to a meeting Tuesday, the 21st at 3 p.m. And Jamie, I just forwarded the email.
Thanks, Tyson.
Excellent. I have a question about the comment. People lost their hydro after the accident. Is that what happened?
No, it was during the fire in Parham. The hydro, from my understanding, was shut off in the area.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was intentionally shut off or if it was as a result of the fire itself, because there was damage to the hydro wires, but I'm not sure the extent of how and when the hydro was cut.
Okay, I just didn't know what situation we were talking about. Okay, does anyone have any other questions on the activity report? Hearing none, is there anyone voting no? Motion's carried. Have a motion moved by Elwin Burke, seconded by Brent Cameron. Whereas Council passed bylaw 2020-32 at the June 23rd, 2020 meeting, and whereas the following passage of the bylaw, staff in the process of researching the questions asked by council from the discussion about the bylaw have determined that it would be in the best interest of the municipality to require permits year-round rather than during the fire season. And whereas the bylaw has been amended to reflect this change and clarify definitions. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council accept the amendments to the open air burn bylaw, which will be effective as of September 1st, 2020, and that the said bylaw be passed later in the meeting. Discussion, questions, or comments?
It's Tom, Your Worship. I have a few comments to make on this.
Okay.
First of all, I know you mentioned cooking fire, and presumably this would be a small contained fire to cook food and that. But I don't really. What is there a definition of what you would call a cooking fire in this definition? And I've got 3 or 4 other points I want to make. Is there a definition of a cooking fire? What kind of
through you,
structure would that be?
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor. There is a definition of cooking fire in the provincial statute, and the cooking fires and charcoal barbecues weren't included in our bylaw.
Right.
And to be honest, with our size of campfires that we have, I guess for clarification, maybe we should have maybe even put the definition of campfire in there. but
Right.
there's never been any complaints around a cooking fire. The bulk of the complaints that we do get through our burning bylaw is the large brush fires.
Okay, I've got four other fires. Okay, the number two, I've got a problem with the fire season. Sorry, Jamie, but I really don't think that we should require permits in the fall season after October 31st. To me, that does not make any sense. I'm not in favor of that. The other thing under prohibition, I don't agree with the fire times because this, again, to me doesn't make any sense. And I know that we've kind of briefly talked about it, but to start a fire 2 hours before sunset and put it out 1 hour before sunrise, to me, that just from a practical point of view doesn't make any sense. The other thing I got a problem with is under the regulation. It says in here, I noticed that we have allowed cooking fires, which is contrary to that comment that you made under the application, deleting of cook fires. So there's just a disconnect there because you allow cooking fires under the regulation, but you deleted under application. And the last point I want to make under section 10, page 4, the flame height is contrary to the height in definition. In one area, you've got it, I believe it says 6 feet. In the other, it says 10 feet. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. So those are my 5 points. I'm not in favor of the permitted for the full season. Okay, that's my comments.
Madam Mayor, Bill here.
Yes.
I actually was going to bring up the fact about burning in the wintertime, where you actually had the regulation saying you could only burn for 2 hours before sundown and have to have it up 1 hour after, which meant that you were only going to allow burning because you're only going to be allowing burning in the wintertime at night. And I suspect that's really not needed because, first of all, if your fire did get away in the wintertime, you're going to ask firefighters to come out in the middle of the winter to try and put it out. So it doesn't make any sense to me to have to that direction in regard to when you can burn in the wintertime. I think that really should be removed, and I don't agree that you need a permit to burn in the wintertime, because for the most part, most burning in the wintertime would be brush piles or whatever that people couldn't burn in the summertime. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's just my comment.
Okay. Any other comments? And then Jamie can respond to them all, maybe?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll just jump in here before we get too many more, so
Okay.
so I can address.
Don't
So
forget
I'll start with Tom. I'll double check through here because I'm thinking that maybe 6 and 10 are in the corrections, but it should be the no higher than 6 feet, 2 meters in diameter. The permit system going to year round was so that when it came to any type of enforcement outside of the restricted fire zone that the M&R sets, that we could legally still apply fees to that person that violated the bylaw. Because the way the bylaw is currently written, are technically, I think we're only able to issue violations of the burn bylaw between April 1st and October 30th. So that's why we've changed it so that the permits are valid for a year, and that allows us to to enforce the violations outside the restricted fire zone, fire time set or fire date set by the ministry. And that in itself, and that's the confusion with the 2 hours before and 2 hours after that you question. That unfortunately, that is the definition under the provincial statute, and that's what we have to follow. That we can't alter that or make changes to that.
Jamie, just it's Brent, just a bit of a clarification. So what you're saying is that unless a person buys a permit, we don't have a mechanism for finding them under this bylaw. Is that a right interpretation? Because I would think that we would, possibly be able to put a clause in and saying, notwithstanding every person that engages in open air burning is subject to the bylaw, regardless of permit. There must be some language that says even if you don't own a permit, you are certainly subject to the stipulations in the bylaw.
Yeah, and through you, Madam Mayor, and that I guess it's trying to keep this simple and less confusing for everyone. Even if the person does not have a permit and is found, know that we can pursue fees for services outside of that. It's more for the off season and being able to do that. And I'd have to send it back just for legal interpretation to see if we, instead of going January to December with our burn bylaw, if we can replace it with a clause that outside the restricted fire time, residents are still required to abide by the terms and conditions of the bylaw. But then if to satisfy Tom and Bill's comments about burning in the wintertime, then that would be another clause. So that would be something that we'd have to, to be honest, I'd like to take back for a legal interpretation on that to make sure that it's binding and we are able to collect fees.
I think that's reasonable. And I guess the one question I've had is the permits that we've already gotten this year, which I believe go to the end of October, will they be extended for 12 months? Or do we have to get renewed permits in October?
No, the way we were going to roll this out is because it came after the fact of moving to the 1-year permits. Then at the end of whoever, for those that bought permits already, then their permits would be extended until December 31st, and then we carry over in the new year of the purchasing of the new permits for 2021.
Okay.
Question I have, Jamie, because when you look at fire season for your definition, because it talks meaning the period between April 1st and October 31st. So if we're looking at doing permits all year, then would that not have to be incorporated?
Sorry, I can't move. I keep trying to move the screen on the computer, but that's Cindy.
Yes, it is. Right there where it's got the definition under fire service. It's got fire season means between April 1st and October 31st. So what I'm hearing from a couple of members of council, that's the fire seasons then. But if we're looking at doing permits, and that's your recommendation, do them all year, would you not change that time period?
So if I can jump in there just for a moment, because I changed that definition for fire season as defined in the Act, and can also be extended past April 1st and October 31st if the minister decrees it. So that's why I've added in the section 37 of the Forest Fire Prevention Act. Yeah. So that's why that change was made. But I did, under the application section, it does say that the bylaw applies during the fire season and outside the fire season to try to incorporate both. Sorry.
Okay, because it does say fire season, but it says or as may be ordered. So I was just clarifying.
Yeah.
Defer this motion till Jamie gets some more information with regards to the two things that we spoke, Bill and I spoke of.
We can, if that is what council wants to do. I would need a mover and a seconder to defer.
I would make the motion to defer.
But okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd support the deferral as well. I couldn't jump into the last meeting to ask for the deferral before it was passed because we want to have it completely right and everybody happy before we move forward with it. So.
Okay. Who seconded that?
Bill McDonald.
Bill
Okay.
did.
Tom moved and Bill seconded to defer to our next meeting.
Is that enough time, Jamie?
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, before we leave the issue here to Jamie, my issue is not whether we have a permit to burn in the wintertime. My issue is the time with which you're suggesting it has to happen.
Yeah, I agree too.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's Cindy and I will sit down and we'll go through it and we'll take your comments and work it in there and see what the interpretation we get back from the lawyer.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yes, because when it's dark at 4 o'clock, waiting till 7 is like bedtime.
That's right, especially by 4:30.
So, I have a motion to defer. Is there anyone voting no to the deferral motion? Okay, motion's carried to be deferred. All right. Now that's it for fire.
That's it for fire. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jamie.
You too, Jamie.
Okay, now we're moving on to finance. And
Sure, I'm just switching my seat so Michael can sit down.
Okay, we have a motion moved by Tom Dewey, seconded by Cindy Kelsey, that council approved the check distribution reports totaling $678,536.89 as prepared by the treasurer. Discussion? Anyone voting?
If I just make a comment or a question.
Okay.
You have Cindy as the seconder. Is she part of the meeting? I don't see her here unless
She
she's.
was.
Cindy's here.
Oh, okay, good.
Is.
Thank you. Just wanted to
Cindy's
make
on the
sure we were
phone.
following proper order.
That's good. Always good to check. Okay, is there anyone voting no? Motion's carried. Next, moved by Bill McDonald, seconded by Sherry Wan, that council approve the following apportionments of assessment as recommended by impact for 2020 as applicable for the following roll numbers. And there's a whole bunch of them in your package. Any discussion, questions or comments? Is anyone voting no? Motion is carried.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Just interject with a question. We received an invoice from Aon to insure the Hinchinbrook School. I know I did not give them advice to move forward with that, but the invoice has come in, so I'd just like to address and get council's thoughts on whether we should proceed or not. Again, just reminding that vandalism is not covered, but everything else might be, like a truck hitting it, snowfall on it. I understand from Andy, talking with Andy, Development Services Manager, that the building looks better. I don't know when we're going to list it. It's $300 for the end of the year. It may be spent and not used, I'll say it that way, or it could be a good $300 spent. So just, again, trying to get council's thoughts as to whether to proceed forward with that or not. Thank you.
Okay. What's your pleasure? Spend the 300?
Yeah.
Pay it.
Okay. Thank you, council and Madam Mayor.
All right. Okay, I have a motion moved by Brent Cameron, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that council received the report entitled Request for Easement over Tay Havelock Trail, prepared by Deputy Clerk for information. And that council declared the subject lands as surplus for the purpose of granting an easement in favor of the vacant lot described as part of Lot 11, Concession 10, Olden, Part 1, 13R, 15998. And that the subject property be exempt from the requirements of obtaining an appraisal on the basis that the interest is an easement per paragraph 11E of the policy. And further, that following the public meeting, a grant of easement be finalized directly with the applicants provided that the applicants cover all costs of surveying and registering the easement, agrees to the terms and conditions dealing with any concerns brought forward in the public meeting or by staff or stakeholders. Discussion. Hearing none. Is there anyone voting no? Motion's carried. Motion moved by Victor and seconded by Nikki that council passed resolution 415-2020 directing staff proceed with the road naming process pursuant to bylaw 2011-22. And whereas the proposed name Dalton Lane has been provided to the property owners on the said lane and no alternative has been requested. And whereas pursuant to section 48 of the Municipal Act, public notice must be provided prior to passing a bylaw naming a private lane, and that said public notice will be circulated in the local paper and on Township website. Now therefore be it resolved that council receive this report for information purposes, and further that staff bring a bylaw to council at the August 11th meeting to amend bylaw 2002-125 to add Dalton Lane. Discussion? Hearing none. Is there anyone voting no? Motion's carried. Okay, the motion moved by Elwin, seconded by Victor, that council receive the MVCA summary dated June 19th, 2020 for information. Any discussion on this motion? Is anyone voting no? Motion's carried. Moved by Nikki and seconded by Brent that council received the Quinte Conservation Authority April 16th, 2020 minutes for information. Any discussion? Anyone voting no? Motion's carried. Moving right along here. Moved by Sherry and seconded by Bill that council receive EWOC Spring Summer newsletter for information. Actually, it's EOWC, Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, EOWC. Questions or comments? Anyone voting no? Motion's carried. Okay. Now, there's a suggestion of a 5-10 minute recess because our next item is public meeting for the road closure and conveyance.
Madam Mayor, we still have communication correspondence to do a resolution for.
Oh, sorry, yes, I see it here. All right. Moved by Nikki and seconded by Elwin that council receive the following correspondence, and it's 1 to 10 in your agenda. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor, it's Victor here.
Yes.
Just the number 10, the rezoning notification from South Frontenac was added. Can I have an explanation of what this is and why it came to us as correspondence?
Okay, I can mention that what is happening is anytime that there is a rezoning taking place in an adjoint municipality, say for South Frontenac in this case, we are notified because we are adjacent landowners to this property in case we have any concerns or comments on the subject property. I can let you know that where it actually is. Just going to look to see if it says the ad, like for map wise, to know exactly.
If it's helpful, I do have a map that shows this property in relation to the township property, but it'll take me a minute to find it.
Actually, if you just tell us, that's probably enough.
Okay, it's on Buck Bay Road.
Buck Bay, yeah.
Okay, Buck Bay Road at 644. It's known as 631 and 644 Buck Bay Road, which is in the district of Bedford.
And we abut Bedford, so that's why we would get notified.
That's correct.
And there are
Thank
two
you.
small township-owned parcels just a little further in on our boundary to the southwest. They're two landlocked pieces of land I think we got from a tax sale, so we are listed as owners within the zone.
That's
Okay.
right. That's correct. Yes. Mhm.
Thank you.
Victor, that's sufficient? Okay. Okay. We now will take a 5 to 10 minute recess. I believe Cindy.
Fran,
Yes.
Can I just interrupt, because I don't know if you want to do that, that's fine, but I do see that Mr. Harris is already joined the meeting, and I have heard from the other person who wanted to join the meeting that he's not. So we do have everybody here that we need for the public meeting. So I'll leave it up to you whether you still want to take a break.
I think I would say let's keep going.
Madam Mayor, I would also, because we have another meeting starting at 7 o'clock and another Zoom meeting. So I'll have to leave if we don't get done.
Oh, we'll be done by 7 o'clock.
I have to eat too, ma'am.
Right, we're going to move on to a public meeting, and we have Mr. Harris on the line, I believe.
Yes, sir. I'm online.
Okay, excellent. What I'll do is I'll read the motion and then we can discuss it. That council receive input from the public meeting and the accompanying report prepared by the deputy clerk, and that council approve the recommendation to stop up, close, and convey to the applicants, Stuart David Harris and Brigitta Maria Harris, that portion of Oak Avenue Plan 1113, lying north of the road allowance between lots 15 and 16, Holden, and between lots 3 on Plan 1113, pin 36225-0419, and part of lot 16 in section 11, Olden, pin 36235-0433, to be a lot addition to the applicant's properties. And that prior to conveying the road allowance to the applicant, the township grant any required easement in favor of Hydro One Networks if requested. And that an appraisal be completed to determine the purchase price for the property to be conveyed once the reference plan is complete. And that prior to passing the bylaw to close and convey, the council consider a bylaw deeming lot 3, plan 1113, not to be a lot on a plan of subdivision, in order that the road closure lands can merge at law with lot 3. So we have no other members of the public except Mr. Harris, who is the applicant here. Any questions or comments from any member of council?
And if I may, before we go any further, I will just mention that I did speak with an adjoining property owner, Mr. Moore, who had just some questions more so related to the location of the private lane that the Harrises and he uses to access their property. We are exchanging some documents to try to determine the location. He believes that the private lane may actually be located on his property as opposed to on the public road allowance. However, we're going to deal with that separately, and he's confirmed that he's fine with the application in the meantime proceeding with the Harrises because it doesn't impact his specific access.
Okay. Okay. No other questions or comments? I would ask if there's anyone voting no to the motion. Hearing no one voting no, the motion is carried. So Mr. Harris, the staff will talk to you about what the next steps are.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Next, we are going to skip over the burning bylaw, right?
Yep.
We just deferred it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I have a motion moved by Victor and seconded by Elwin that bylaw 2020-35, being a bylaw to create reduced speed zones within the Township of Central Frontenac, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 14th day of July 2020. Discussion? Anyone voting no? Motion's carried. Okay. Now, any notice of motions? Any giving of notices of motion?
No.
Any new or other business?
No.
Okay. I have a motion moved by Bill McDonald, seconded by Sherry Wan. That council move into closed session to discuss matters regarding 1, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by municipality or local board pursuant to section 239(2)C Henderson Road. 2, advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose pursuant to section 239(2)F procurement/tender process. And 3, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board pursuant to section 239(2)E fire. Any discussion? All those in favor? Or wait, sorry, anybody voting no? Motion's carried. So now we have to go out of this meeting and then back into closed session. Greg, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Question about the speed limits bylaw.
Sure.
Is this the entire section of these roads? Like I noticed a Bell Line Road east and west. Does that mean the entire span of Bell Line Road is going to 40?
I would say yes.
So in that case, I didn't see anything on the report as to what the cost of, presumably you'll have to put up signs marking the change, because if there's no sign, it's 80, right?
Yes.
Correct. Through you, Madam Mayor. Craig, if you want, I can provide a better description for you in the morning if you want, but the financial aspect I can answer right now. We have a lot of the signs already. We have some of the signs already, and we haven't had to spend as much as we thought this year on signs in our operating budget. So our current budget should cover the signs. Now, the bylaw does state that they don't have to be all updated right away. They have to, the bylaw doesn't come in effect until the sign's erected. So it's not like we have to run out and do this all in 1 week.
Okay.
To answer the other portion of your question, there's going to be some edits to as we go through hamlets and we find other sections where the speed may have to change. But when you post a road, the majority of it, you can also use the yellow cautionary speed signs as well in other areas where you need to reduce the speed even more.
Okay. Okay, I think I got it. But the bottom line is essentially the entirety of these roads, Gig Road and Hagen Road and these Harold Burke Road, essentially these are all going down to 40. Essentially, yes. And something else that's driving this movement is it helps us with our minimum. It helps us achieve minimum maintenance standards as well. It's if a road is currently unassumed at 80, I have to maintain it, and we're liable for minimum maintenance standards of a road that's classified as an 80. So if it's a 40, then I've got a little more leeway. Not saying that level of service would get reduced at all, but it's just helps us out legally a little bit as well. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg.
You are welcome. Excellent. Okay, so we will leave this meeting and go into closed and then come back to this meeting.
Correct. I'll open up the next meeting momentarily.
Okay.